Hello, my name is Leah. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here and for subscribing to my channel. I seriously cannot believe that I have hit 1,000 subscribers. That number is just so big. YouTube has been something that I've really enjoyed and really loved for a really long time. And obviously, you know, everyone always takes these moments to say, I couldn't have done it without you guys. But it is true. Like, I could make these videos and I could post them, and I can control that. This channel would not be a community if it weren't for you guys. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting me. Today I've got myself my little cup of tea, and I'm gonna be answering some of your questions just as like a little way to say thank you for everything and, you know, open up and share more about the things that you guys want to know. So I've categorized these into the different things that they talk about. So up first, we're going to talk about YouTube stuff. I've got my iPad here with the questions because I film with my phone, so I can't reference them here. First of all, we have, what made you decide to start your channel? Any insights for writers debating on making one? Me on YouTube has a fun history. Back in like 2012, 2013 era of YouTube, I was obsessed with the vloggers of that day / like the comedy sketch YouTubers. And so whenever I was like 15, I think, maybe 14, I started my own YouTube channel. Obviously that did not last very long. That just wasn't my thing. Like, I was just copying other people. My junior year of high school, me and two other girls that I'm still best friends with started a group channel together, again, kind of in the vein of like Our Second Life and like the YouTube content houses that were cropping up. And that was literally so much fun. Like, it went nowhere, it meant nothing, but it was so much fun to do that with those friends, Maddie and Carly. If you're watching this, hey guys. But that quickly fell apart as well. We didn't continue that on for very long. Around that same time though, I think maybe during my senior year of high school is whenever I created this channel. And this time I decided that I wanted to do things that I was a little bit more interested in. I had bought a ukulele, you know, as every white girl does. So I was posting ukulele covers of songs. I sing not very well, so I was doing some of that. All of those videos are gone now. And I started talking about books a little bit more. I just kind of started talking about things that I wanted to talk about and not taking YouTube as seriously and not thinking that I was just gonna get famous overnight. I'd also been watching BookTube for years at this point, but I, for some reason, never connected the dots that I really like books and I really like YouTube, so maybe I should just start a BookTube channel. In this era, I kind of shifted further into BookTube, and this channel became a purely BookTube channel. I was not consistent at this point. I was just kind of posting whenever. I did not tell my parents about this either, so I was filming when they weren't home and trying to like keep it on the DL. And then in college was whenever I started getting into writing more, and so some of that started creeping into the channel, and summer 2020 was whenever I shifted into a purely authortube channel and whenever I started posting weekly and consistently. All of that kind of contributes to what made me start my channel. Mainly it's just that I've always loved YouTube. I've always loved video creating. Discovering YouTube and discovering my love for making videos on YouTube honestly was what led me into getting a film degree. Obviously, pulling in some of my other hobbies like reading and writing has made its way into the way that I do YouTube as well. And then the second part of that, any insight for writers debating on making one? I say if you're debating it, just do it. Like, try it out, and if you don't like it, you don't like it, and that's that, you know? You never know if it's something that you're gonna like until you try it. I will say at first, it can be discouraging whenever your videos are not as good as what you're seeing other people make, but I think that writers will understand that feeling a lot because it's the same way of how, you know, when you write a first draft and you're comparing it to published novels, there's a difference there. And it takes practice and it takes learning in order to do stuff well. Just try it. Don't get too discouraged when your videos aren't like top tier. And also ignore YouTube Creator Studio. Just never look at your analytics, period. And then once you like realize, okay, this is something that I do want to do more regularly and I do want to try to grow my channel, then you can start looking at analytics. But like when you're just trying it out, ignore view count, ignore subscribers. I know that's easier said than done, but trust me. The next question is favorite video you've made so far. This is difficult, and I'm about to have to get on my channel to see what videos I've made. I think I have two answers for this. One of them is the video, it's called Book Recs based on songs I wrote in middle school. Basically, it is what the title says it is. I read some of my songs and shared some of the songs that I wrote in middle school and kind of tried to tie those into book recommendations. It was just really fun to make. I laugh so hard whenever I watch it. Like, literally, I was editing it and I was just laughing the whole time. So that was a really fun one to make for me personally. And then also another really fun one to make was my 24-hour write-a-thon vlog, mainly because writing for 24 hours is an ordeal. I was getting a little bit loopy there towards the end. It was fun to just challenge myself in that, and I got a ton of work done that day. Like, that's probably the most work I've ever got done in a single day on my book. And then the next YouTube related question I have is, how do you stay so consistent? I think this is a combination of things. Number one, I think the biggest is mindset. I say this because I've had the consistent YouTube stuff that I'm doing now versus the inconsistent YouTube stuff that I was doing back in the day. I just treat it like a job, basically. Like, I'm not getting paid from this. I have reached 1,000 subscribers, but I have not reached 4,000 watch hours yet. I will let you guys know whenever it does become monetized though. But even without that, I basically just told myself I'm gonna treat it like a job. I have my weekly deadline of my video that gets uploaded every Thursday, and I just have to hit that deadline every week. Number two, honestly, just has to do with the privileges and opportunities that I personally have in life. Again, I can compare now YouTube stuff to then YouTube stuff. Whenever I was making videos in high school, I was very limited in the times that I could film, in when I could edit, all of that kind of stuff, not only because I was in school, but also, like I said, I didn't tell my parents that I was doing this. I had to film when they weren't home, or I had to be really quiet as I filmed, which doesn't really translate super well for on-screen energy or audio. I also was broke because I was in high school, so I didn't have the money to buy the things that could help me make good videos. And so all of that kind of led to me either not super enjoying the process as much, the process being more difficult, and thus it being harder to motivate myself to actually get the stuff done. In college, it was a little bit easier, because I'm not trying to hide this from my parents, but I was trying to hide it from my roommates, so I kind of fell into the same trap there. I was getting a lot better with my skills, I was getting quicker, so that kind of helped me a lot. Because I was studying film, I learned a lot about video production and how to do that really cheaply, and so my quality went up super high, or higher than it was in my high school bedroom. And the increase of that quality and the ease of creating the videos helped me be more consistent. And now I am married, my husband has a day job, and I work from home. So the majority of the day I have the apartment to myself, which makes me feel the most comfortable filming is whenever no one's listening to me talk to a camera. I do have a little bit more spending money, which I've used to buy a light in order to help light myself. I bought a microphone to help me sound better. And so all of those things combined have helped the ease of production be better. So for me, consistency comes down to mindset and treating it like a job, essentially, and doing anything that you can to make the process easier. Okay, the next category has only one question in it, and that is, tell us more about your faith. So I've mentioned a few times in some of my videos, specifically my reading videos mostly, that I am a Christian. This is sort of a broad question, so I will just kind of go through my background with that and where I'm at now. So I was brought up in a Christian home. My parents are both Christian, and they both come from a more charismatic background. But growing up, my family, we always went to a non-denominational church. So that was sort of the church background that I was brought up in. At a very young age, I must have been 7. I had heard the "you must accept Christ to be saved" message enough that I told my parents that I wanted to accept Jesus into my heart. And so they both prayed with me before bed one night, and that was sort of my salvation moment, if you will. But obviously, as a young child, there's only so much you can understand in terms of religion and differentiating your own faith from your parents. And so I do see that moment as as a child as being genuine faith, but also a very childlike faith, obviously. In middle school, I struggled so much with social anxiety. Like, I have genuinely tried to repress my memories of middle school as much as possible because I just remember feeling anxious and miserable literally every single day. Like, I'm sure there were fun moments, I'm sure there were bright spots, but there was just so much fear and anxiety going on that I don't even remember those times. Part of that is my own natural propensity towards anxiety. I do still have anxiety. I've had panic attacks in the past, but it's not debilitating anxiety to the point where it gets in the way of my like day-to-day. Part of that in middle school too is just being in middle school, you know, like we all are going through some changes at that time. And I think part of it too was my own obsession with myself, not even in terms of thinking I'm all that and being super like proud of myself, but just my obsession with how useless I was, with how ugly I was, with how, you know, all of those things. And I was just constantly aware of other people, constantly wondering what they were thinking about me, trying to impress other people, all of that kind of stuff. I did go through some bullying, not to a, I don't know, super extreme extent, but enough to remember and enough to leave a mark. And the reason all this ties back into my faith is because the summer between my 8th and 9th grade year, I was at a church camp with that non-denominational church that I went to. And I remember there being a sermon about like forgiveness or something like that. And it didn't really have anything to do with the way that I was feeling or like my anxiety, but there was something in that clicked for me in a different way that never really clicked for me as a child. And that was the very personal nature of Jesus dying on the cross. It's not just that, oh, he died on the cross as like a blanket thing, which is true, but like he did that for me because he loves me. God, the creator of the universe, loves me in a very specific and intimate way. It kind of just like instantly reframed everything for me. I obviously still struggled heavily with social anxiety. It wasn't like it cured my anxiety overnight, but it really helped me reframe the way that I see other people, because not only am I seeing other people as God died specifically because he loves them the same way that he loves me, but also because what they think about me doesn't matter, you know? Like, if the God of the universe loves me, if the God of the universe chose me, I don't care what Bridget from English class says. I didn't have a classmate named Bridget. That's just something that I threw out there. But anyways, that was kind of the moment where my faith took on a more personal aspect to it. It became much less about the fact that, oh, this household is Christian, my parents are Christian, we go to church, that means I'm Christian. And since then, I have been growing more and more in my faith. I think the only other big turning point for me happened kind of through the end of high school, but mostly also in college, because I started to really want to know more about why the Bible is true. Like, it wasn't really something I ever questioned until late high school / college. It's like, okay, yeah, the Bible says the Bible is true, obviously, but like, why do we believe that the Bible is true in saying that the Bible is true? And so I started getting into apologetics a lot more. I started learning a lot more about like the actual reasonable arguments for Christianity, the history behind the Bible, and why these specific books and letters were collected and why these are considered scripture versus something else that was written at the time. And I think learning that again brought my relationship with God to a whole nother level, because now it's not just like, here's this vague being in the sky. Now I'm seeing like the way that God is moving through history and the way that his hand is just over everything. And the fact that I can sit here and like reason out why this makes sense, because I'm a very analytical person. Like, I don't like not having a reason for things. Ever since I realized that Christianity is something that you can genuinely like test, and like the Bible itself even says, like, it asks the reader, test this. Like, I had to look up the verse that I was thinking about, but it's 1 Peter 3:15. It says, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." The New Testament is full of people being like, don't take my word for it. Test this for yourself. I just found it very encouraging that this worldview of Christianity isn't afraid of being questioned. You know, there's the thing that parents do where you as the kid ask like, well, why is this a rule? And they're just like, because I said so. Like, that's not what the Bible does. And I find that very encouraging, and encouraging that there are actually answers out there. So that's kind of my journey growing up in a Christian home. But to lay out exactly what I do believe, I believe that the Gospels are historically accurate documents that have been preserved through history because there is evidence to support that. And so because of that, I believe that Jesus was a real man who lived a real life, that he did die on the cross in order to cover our sin and our disobedience towards God, not only because God is loving, because God made a way for us even in our rebellion to reconcile with him and to have a right relationship with him, but also because God is a God of justice and he cannot let sin go unpunished or unpunished sin be in his presence. And so in order to give us a way to have that right relationship with him, he paid for our sin himself by sacrificing his son Jesus on the cross, who was fully man and fully God. I believe that Jesus rose on the third day, and that anyone who places their faith in him, not only believing that he existed and not only believing that he died on the cross and, you know, did all this, but recognizing the authority that comes with that and submitting yourself to what the Word of God says in the Bible. And in that, choosing to live your life according to God's standards, which is, you know, what church people say when they say repent from your sins. It's not just naming the sin. It's not just recognizing that it is a sin. It's turning away from that sin because you recognize the authority that God holds over your life. And anyone who does that and places God in that rightful position of authority in their life will be saved, and because their sins are covered by the sacrifice that Jesus made, will be able to spend eternity with God in heaven. Sorry if that was a little bit long. I just wanted to cover all my bases there, and hopefully that answered the question. And then the last topic of questions that I got are about freelancing/writing stuff. And the first question we have is freelance writing, how to do it and make money. That is the question. We also have one that just says freelancing, so I'm going to kind of lump these two together. So to clarify, what I do for freelancing is I am on Fiverr and I do freelance developmental editing for books. It's going to depend like what you're wanting to do with freelancing on how you start. And there's many ways to start, but the way that I started was basically, number one, I knew what I was good at. I know that I'm not trained and not qualified to be a copy editor, so I did not put my gigs up as copy editing gigs because I think that would be disingenuous and slightly scammy to be promising people a copy edit when I'm not in fact qualified for that. I am, however, qualified for developmental editing, so I knew what I was good at. The route that I chose was going through Fiverr, mainly because I've used it before over other like freelancing sites, and also because I did not want to put in the effort of marketing myself, which is why I didn't start on like a website or trying to build my own business that way. Fiverr kind of has that built-in accessibility with the search features and the way that they tap into the Google SEO. So that's where I placed myself, was on Fiverr. And from there, quite honestly, I haven't done much to like push my freelance services. I haven't advertised it much other than just talking about my experience on my channel. That again is down to, you know, the Fiverr search features and people just happening to find me. My strategy beginning was to price myself super low, like dirt cheap, to the point where I was basically working for free in order to gather some reviews. And then once I had that baseline of reviews, I was able to up my prices to a more reasonable level. And now anytime I do a freelance editing project, I'm getting paid a fair rate according to my skill level. I think that part's important too. I am by no means super experienced. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I'm skilled, but I'm not super experienced in this world. And so I'm not pricing myself the same way that people who've been doing this for decades are pricing themselves. I'm at the very low end of what the range is for developmental editors. And, you know, as I get more experience, that price can come up. But yeah, that's the advice I would give for how to start making money freelancing, is figure out what your niche is, figure out what you're good at, figure out what you have time for, and then, you know, start from the bottom, work your way up, and then once you have a steady thing going, you can slowly start to kind of increment that price for yourself. Next, we have a question where the person was talking about their own process. They've been practicing growing character development skills and starting a book with the character arc in mind, but that it's getting difficult to put words on the page. And the question had to do with something that I mentioned about how I always start with theme first. And that is, how specifically does theme first help you? What about it makes it comforting / gives you inspiration to know what words to write? For me personally, I always start with theme because of the way that I think about story. To me, a character arc is a demonstration of the theme. When a character has a misbelief or a flaw or whatever you want to call it, and they go through the story in order to learn why what they believe is wrong and what they should rightly believe about the world, that is a demonstration of how that theme plays out in real life. If it's a misbelief, then there has to be a right belief. And it's not that there's a black and white yes or no question for most of these things. Like, there's different ways that you can play off of the same theme and get like different answers to that misbelief question. But that's why I have to start with theme in mind, is because if I don't know what the answer to the question is at the end. I need to know what the lesson my character is going to be learning in order to know how they're going to get there. And again, same thing with prose, same thing with tone, same thing with pacing. All of these like writer questions that we come up with whenever we're drafting or when we're planning something, in my brain at least, always tie back to that theme. So if I don't have that theme and that crux of everything, then I just can't take the next step in planning my book, in drafting my book, etc., etc. So, for example, my book Project Shadows. The book as a whole is about duty versus desire, what you want to do as a person, what you think will be fulfilling to you versus the responsibilities that we have as people. And so my two main characters, it's a dual POV, and so they sort of have opposing arcs across the whole thing. My main character, Elaine, starts in a place of duties get in the way of my desires. The responsibilities that she has inhibit her from fully enjoying life, inhibit her from being satisfied and being happy. Therefore, responsibility is limiting and responsibility is something to be avoided, essentially. Versus Darren, my other main character, who has the opposite belief, essentially. He sees desires and wants and things like that as being fickle. He thinks that the only thing that gives life meaning is having like a higher cause to aspire to. And so he places an overemphasis on responsibility to the point where he's willing to let innocent people suffer for the sake of the greater good that he believes in. And so through the book then, every plot decision, every writing decision, everything that I'm doing is being tested up against, okay, how am I getting these characters to learn why their misbelief is wrong throughout the whole thing? And so before I started that project, I needed to know what lesson Elaine was going to be learning and what lesson Darren was going to be learning in the end, in order to fully understand what the end was, what I was writing towards. And even if that theme changes, like as you're drafting, which has happened to me many times before too, like I start writing and I realize, wait a second, no, this book is about something else. I then will just take a step back, figure out what that something else is, and then continue. Because again, theme just helps me have that like tent post, I guess, that solid answer that I'm trying to reach at the end of the book. They also say, I'm also a visual person and need to see words on the page in order to play with them. And I'm also a plancer, if that gives you any context. I would say if you're trying to figure out if this is something that would work for you, I think honestly, like talking about character arcs and theme, but also being like a plancer, the book Story Genius, I think was like made for this type of situation because it has a heavy emphasis on theme as character arc. Like, we start with creating the character's misbelief, and throughout the book it has a lot of like pre-writing exercises, and so you get to know your character through actually writing scenes and their history and their backstory. Near the end of like the book, like the method, Lisa Kron has you write the first scene, aka the opening of the book, and then she has you write the aha moment, which is the moment that the main character realizes their misbelief. And so that aha moment is kind of what I'm talking about whenever I say I need that like answer to the question. Playing with some pre-writing stuff and maybe like writing the first scene and then skipping to the end and writing that realization or the aha moment might help like give some structure to like the planting process. And if this doesn't work out for you, if starting with theme doesn't work out for you, you don't have to do that either. There's a lot of people that start with plot only and then in revisions figure out the theme that gets inserted into that. There's a lot of people that start with character vibes, not even in terms of character arc and thematic things like that, but like character archetypes and stuff like that. And then again, in revisions, insert the theme, insert some more plot structure later on. So whatever works for you, whatever helps you get words on the page, like don't feel bad about your process either. And then the last question we have is, what's your dream review / compliment on your writing? And I love this question so much. It's not something I've really thought about like specifically, but I think the thing that I would love to hear most about my writing is that it touched someone emotionally in the way that I was intending. This was something that happened whenever I was working on my short film, my thesis film for school. I wrote about a grandma who was grieving the loss of her husband and how her young, energetic, like hopeful grandson kind of like comes into her life and like wrecks her grief essentially. And in that, she kind of finds some healing because of the way that she reconciles not having to let go of him, but also knowing that life still has joy available in it even whenever he's gone. And we were reading our scripts in class, and this one guy, like, I don't know, he got all choked up and was like, whenever he was giving me his note, was saying that the emotion behind it really touched him because of something that had happened in his life and blah, 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 blah. And I literally, like, I was trying so hard not to just like grin the widest grin because he was obviously like a little bit emotional about like what he was saying. And so I was trying not to just like smile super wide, but like as a writer, that was like the best moment. And so I want to hear that again about my books, about anything that I write. I want to hear that. This is going to take 5 million years to edit. Cool, 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 cool. But those are all the questions that I have to answer today. Thank you again, like seriously so much for being here, for subscribing to my channel. I love posting videos, but more than that, I love being able to interact with you guys. I never thought when I was but a young teenager putting reach 1,000 subscribers on my bucket list that I would make like some genuinely really great friends, like some of my best writing friends, by doing this on YouTube. And I've met so many people and enjoyed like such great connection because of this. Like that is worth more than anything in the world to me. So thank you for being here. Let me know if you have any more questions in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you as always so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye.